everybody, welcome to REVAMP, Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional, where we're going to take a fresh new look at autism. I'm Tabitha, your 24-hour online personal parent support professional, and I'm here for you. Today I'm launching my first video for my new series, REVAMP, Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional. And I'm even more excited because you are here and this series is for you. Now, I want to first start by apologizing to all the viewers who were anticipating this series to start last week. I ran into some major technical difficulties, but they're all fixed now. So, this series is about to take off. I'm so confident that you are going to enjoy this series, so let's stay connected and start by subscribing to my channel so you can see more of my videos and hit the post notification bell so when I drop a brand new video on YouTube, you will be the first to know. So now you're probably wondering, who is this lady with all this extra energy and where did she come from? She can't possibly have children with all this extra energy. What makes her an expert on autism anyway? And why should I even listen to her? Well, the same reason that makes you an expert on autism is the same reason that makes me an expert on autism. Experience. I'm an autism mom, and I know firsthand that experience is key. I know my child better than anyone, just like you know your child better than anyone. And no one can tell you about your child better than you. Now, I have the utmost respect for the doctors and neurobehavioral pediatricians and behavioral psychologists and all of these experts that are specialized with these wonderful degrees and fancy certifications. They know their stuff and they know the research like the back of their hand, and they can give us that information like that. But how many of those professionals actually go home at the end of the day to a child with autism? There's the difference. You see, some do, and those are the ones who actually tend to get it. But professionals tend to give us all of this wonderful, knowledgeable information because that's their job, and they're good at it. But we are the ones that actually live in the situation because that's our job, and it's also our life. Not the life that we expected or chose, but the life that we unexpectedly had to adapt to. Now, when I think of typical children, they meet the standard. They are mostly in public schools, in the general population classroom. They're sociable, they have friends, they even know how to joke with each other. But when you look at a child with autism, all of those children have an IEP, an individualized educational plan, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's an individualized plan to meet that child's specific needs because the spectrum is so wide. There's no two children on the spectrum that are the same. And autism is not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis. There are children on the spectrum who are verbal and very high functioning, but then there are some who are nonverbal and are just as high functioning minus the speech. There are children who have numerous medical problems, including a history of seizures, and there are some who have no medical problems at all. There are children who are so sweet and lovable. Oh my God, you just could hug them and love them all day long. And then there are children who are so sweet, but don't get next to them, not within 3 feet. Otherwise, their whole world will crumble. And then there are some children, oh, they're sweet. But once that behavior kicks in, it's like, oh my God, what do I do? He kicked out all the bus windows. Yeah. Autism is not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis. And no two children are alike. When it comes to autism, there is no standard. So you and I know what's going to happen when we take little John or little Jane to that birthday party and they can't have the pizza or the same cake that those other kids are eating. We know what's going to happen. But other people on the outside, they just don't get it. And the interesting part is some actually think, oh, why don't you just give your child a pill? Like, you can just give your child a pill and they pop this pill and all of a sudden, oh my God, he's better, does not work like that. And there's nothing that can fix autism except time, patience, understanding, and persistence. That's a must, and that's it. Now, I'm not saying that autism can be cured, but it can definitely get a lot better. So there are certain things that we need to do as parents to take those steps to make sure our child can reach the maximal potential. And in order to do that, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes understanding, it definitely takes patience, and it most definitely will take persistence. Now, you may not have patience now, but I promise you, during your journey, that is going to be the one thing that you will gain, if nothing else: patience. Now, this video today is my very first series on REVAMP, Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional. So today's video is mainly to get to know me and also to introduce you to my new series, REVAMP. I want to explain my vision to you so that you will be able to gain whatever it is that you need to make it through your journey. My goal is to help as many parents as I can because I'm on this journey still, and I've been on this journey for almost 18 years now. So I have a lot of experience. Some of you out there may have more experience than me. But my goal is to help as many people as I can to make the process as smooth as possible. I actually wish I had someone like me when my child was given the diagnosis, because sometimes just the smallest bit of information can make a life-changing difference in that child and in that family. So that is why I created REVAMP, Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional, because I want to share my experiences with you that have made a difference, things that didn't make a difference. And again, no child is alike. No child fits a mold. But something I say, even if it's just one thing, and it makes a difference in your life, then that means this series to me was worth it. So let me start by telling you a little about myself. My name is Tabitha Wilson, and I'm originally from South Jersey. I attended a Catholic high school, and in 1985, I moved to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University. While at Howard, I studied clinical nutrition and became a board-certified registered dietitian. After working in the profession for quite a few years, I realized I couldn't quite afford myself, so I went back to Howard to receive a second degree, and I studied to become a physician assistant. I received my board certification as a physician assistant and worked in that profession for 20 plus years. I also received a master's degree from the University of Nebraska in the area of general surgery and cardiothoracic surgery. I loved Howard University so much that I actually went back to teach in the physician assistant program as a clinical medicine instructor in the College of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences. So I've had a pretty well-rounded and exciting work history. I've worked in just about every area of medicine there is, but I have to tell you, my favorite area of medicine was pediatrics. I love pediatrics because I love children, number one, and that was the area that I was most able to connect and interact with children with autism. So while I'm on the topic of pediatrics, I just want to share a really interesting observation I made around 13 years ago. And this was like late spring, early summer. It was around a time when a lot of kids were just starting to go back outside. It was getting warm outside after being cooped up in the house all winter long. So I remember specifically on this particular night when I was working, two little boys came in around the same time. They both looked to be about 6 years old or so. And they both had a huge gaping laceration to their forehead. They also were both screaming to the top of their lungs. Now, one child was a typical child, and the other child was an autistic child, but the autistic child had a very obvious disability. Now, I went to go see the typical child first, not because of any specific reason. Well, he just registered first, so I went to go and see him first. Spoke with mom, and she said that he was crying because he was afraid to get stitches, because he was afraid of pain. Then I went to go see the autistic child and spoke with his mom, and she said that her child was not afraid of pain. He, matter of fact, had a really high tolerance to pain, and he's always gotten needles and gotten blood drawn, never cried. The reason he was crying was because he had a bad experience with a healthcare provider in the emergency room at one point, and ever since then, he never wanted to go back to the emergency room. So it was really interesting because the perception was, especially with the parents around them in the other rooms, was that both of these children were crying because they were afraid to get stitches. But the reality was the typical child was crying for that very reason. But the autistic child probably would have been the more quiet child because he wasn't crying for that reason. He was crying because of an experience. So I also found it interesting that the surrounding parents who would walk up and down the halls would see the child who was the typical child crying, and they were very compassionate. However, when they saw the child with autism crying, who had the obvious disability, they weren't quite as compassionate, and they were actually kind of standoffish. They seemed to be more annoyed. And as a healthcare provider, of course, you can't allow certain things to bother you, but that kind of ticked me off. And I guess that was just the autism mom in me coming out. Of course, I never said anything about it, but on the inside, it burned me up because here we have two children, both around the same age, both with the same type of injury. Both of these children are crying. However, one is perceived to be, I don't know how they perceived him, to be honest, but the other was more of an annoyance, and I just didn't get it. So my point is, in life, we are going to have to deal with people like that. And the question is, how do you manage people like that? What do you do? There's a way to handle that, and we're going to be talking about that in my series. But I just wanted to mention that to you because I thought that was really interesting, the way there was such a very obvious, sharp division in the way the two children were treated by perception. Now, from that point, I've always been one to jump in whenever I see a child with autism walk in the door, because I always felt like I needed to be there for them because no one else would understand. And this is probably all in my mind, but me being an autism mom, I know what it feels like to take your child to an emergency room or to a healthcare facility and feel like people are staring or annoyed, or to feel like you're not getting as good health care because they're rushing you out the door because your child is crying and they don't know how to handle you. So yeah, I've always jumped in to try to be there for these kids. And I notice the parents always appreciate my being there because I always address myself as being an autism mom and letting them know it's okay. So when you walk in the room, you don't just run in there and start looking in a child's ears because you have to give them their space. And not many providers understand that. Not many providers know that there are sensory issues that you just don't get so close without asking permission. And yeah. So moving right along, as time went by, I eventually got married and had 2 children. Now, my first child was my son, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Now, 2 is a relatively young age to confirm an official diagnosis of autism. So typically, these children are put in a category called pervasive developmental disorders. And basically what that means is there's a suspicion that the child is on the autism spectrum, but they're not really 100% sure where because it's kind of too early to tell. So typically, autism is not diagnosed until about the age of 6. And between the ages of 2 and 6, that's when you usually see the most growth or changes that may take place, progression, regression, things of that nature. So those are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for during those ages. And the thing is, those children actually are eligible for a service called ECI. ECI is early childhood intervention, and that is key. So regardless of whether you're in denial or what your reason and rationale is for not getting your child enrolled in other services, if you don't remember anything else I say, remember early childhood intervention because that is 100% key. Getting your child enrolled in early childhood intervention. Now, early childhood intervention is a service. And what they do is they come out to your home and they do an assessment of your child, checking social skills, nutritional patterns, behavioral patterns, things of that nature. And they make their assessment. So if they find any deficits, what they'll do is come up with a plan for your child, and they'll assign staff to come out to your home. And the staff will be working with the child, maybe with speech therapy or occupational therapy, for fine motor and gross motor skills, things of that nature. So whatever the needs are, there's a service that will come to your home and work with your child in their most common environment, which is usually the home at that age. And at the end of the cycle, when the child is almost 3 years old, they'll do another assessment to see if the child still has the deficits, if he's gotten a lot better, is the service still needed. If there are still deficits or any deficiencies, that means the child is eligible to start school at age 3. So they will be eligible to enroll in the public school system at the age of 3. So they're really getting a jump start by 2 years before the regular kindergartners actually come into school. And that's really a good thing, because that's the age when children will obtain and absorb the most amount of knowledge. The retention of knowledge during that time is like, oh my God, it's amazing. So early childhood intervention is really important. So if the child is able to take advantages of these services early on, there's a chance that even though the child appears to be in the spectrum, that they actually may catch up, and they may progress to a point where maybe they're not on the spectrum. Maybe they were never on the spectrum. They were just kind of delayed in a certain way. But then there are children who are truly on the spectrum. And if they're on the spectrum, the good thing is they will be getting a jump start. So my son was actually in early childhood intervention, and he started school at age 3. But what I did was I actually put him in preschool before he was 3, and he also received early childhood intervention after school. So the reason I did that was because I was just doing the most. I was just trying to help him to get to his maximal potential, not even thinking, oh, maybe he's in overload. But he seemed to be really okay with it, because he really enjoyed being around the other kids, but he still didn't really interact with the other kids. So yeah, there was a deficit there, but eventually he got through that. So it took some time. And again, time is key. It did take time, but the bottom line is he did get through that. So I'm really happy that I did put him in preschool. That's a whole nother challenge anyway by itself that we'll talk about a little bit later. But the bottom line is he wasn't talking. And because he was nonverbal at that time, it was really challenging to know what he knew and what he really didn't know. And he actually retained so much more information than I even thought he did. So another reason why I put him in preschool, because this was my first child, so I really didn't have any other children to compare him with. And because he didn't have any siblings in the home, he didn't really have anyone to interact with, like as far as kids were concerned. So I thought that maybe just putting him in that environment would cause him to, start talking and interacting and getting more engaged. And really, it was good for him because the exposure was really important. Yeah, so he really progressed from early childhood intervention, and I definitely saw him bloom. So he was eventually officially diagnosed with autism at the age of 6. So I've been living with autism for now almost 18 years. Next week will be 18 years. And I'm really proud of my son's accomplishments. I mean, when he was coming up, it's like every single accomplishment, we had a party. And you autism moms and dads out there, you know what that's like, because you have to make a big deal out of those things. So even now at 17, when he accomplishes something that's like, oh my God, basically I want to have a party, but he's like, Mommy, that's for kids, so the fact that he's really progressing and he's kind of on target, but not truly fully on target, he's where he needs to be in his life at this point. So we're still working on things are still a little challenging at times, but for the most part, I'm just like a super proud autism mom. During the process, I'm just so glad that I journaled, video journals and things of that nature, so that I could go back and actually look at all of the data and what I did in the past to get him to where he is right now. So that way it makes it a lot easier for me to share my information with you. Now, the great thing about this was I was actually able to write a book, and I did write a book, which is going to be coming out in December 2020. It's called No Cross, No Crown, A Journey Through Autism, Bullying, and Spiritual Warfare. And this book is really the life of autism and bullying from my daughter's perspective, in a nutshell. So I'm really excited about that, and I want you to kind of really look into getting that book, because it's going to give you so much insight, as well as this channel Revamp as well. So on that note, guys, I want to officially introduce you to my son, Elijah. 18 next week. I don't even know where all the time went. I mean, I remember bringing him home from the hospital, and now he's going to be 18 years old. It's like, oh my goodness. All I can say, enjoy your children right now. Create new memories with them every single day, and cherish all of those memories because the time goes so fast. This is going to wrap up this first video for my new series, Revamp, Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional. Now, I do want to mention that I am going to have a question and answer series, so if you have any questions that you would like to pose, please drop it in the comments or look in the description box and you'll find all my social media contacts. You can contact me directly. I'm also going to have topics from you guys, so if you think of anything that you want to hear about, let me know and I will make sure that I look into that so we can get that out as well. Remember, new book coming out, No Cross, No Crown, A Journey Through Autism, Bullying, and Spiritual Warfare. Really exciting and amazing book, wrapping up my story in a nutshell for the most part, talking about autism and bullying, which was the issue that went down with my daughter. So if you have any of those issues, this is going to be a great book to read. So guys, until next time, peace.